Last Sunday, our Queen spoke to the Commonwealth, honoring the heroes of the past year's battle with the coronavirus and her sympathy to those who have suffered the many losses. And she spoke of the commitment and selfless dedication to duty exhibited by many over the past year. Those virtues have a rather old-fashioned ring to them, but it's just such virtues that are desperately needed in these times that have no precedent to guide us. In a world in which we're prone to proclaim rights and ignore responsibilities, in which we value victimhood over valor, we need to re-examine what is important and what role we're playing or are prepared to play. What is the duty that we are expected to espouse? Duty itself is a word that has such different expectations, and they're largely depending on the culture of your upbringing. Cicero, the Roman philosopher, believed that duties arise from 4 different sources. Because one is human, one's place in life, one's own character, and one's own moral expectations for oneself. Duties come in a wide range of categories. Paying taxes, voting, accepting wartime drafts, serving on a jury, or obeying the law, they all fall under the social contract of duties. Other duties are really more things that are generally admired, but not necessarily done, such as going to the aid of victims of accidents or crimes, isolating, wearing our masks and distancing, volunteering to serve others, or regularly donating blood. Professions each have their own set of duties, and then there are legal duties, and there are duties set out in enforceable legal contracts. There are filial duties, owed to and by family, and they really vary from culture to culture. Some will marry whoever their parents choose because it is their duty. Some will move their parents into their home and care for them as their duty. Others will bear as many children as their body can deliver, as their duty to carry on the family's name. While in our community, many feel that respecting their parents from a distance is sufficient to take care of any such duty. The ultimate social duty, to oppose that which is wrong, forges the way to the duty to revolt against an unjust government. So how does one have this selfless dedication to duty when we have such an unclear vision of what our own duty may be? Is duty merely a self-imposed obligation? Or is it more than that? Is it just living up to the expectations of our parents, or our fraternity, or our profession? Or is it more than that? Is it sufficient to merely be a law-abiding citizen who minds their own business and doesn't harm others? Or is it something more? I think it's all that and so much more. It is what lets you stand up straight, look yourself in the mirror, and not flinch. Doing your duty is about sacrificing your own time, talents, and resources for the well-being of others, with no expectation of reward or recognition. It's taking on responsibilities for which you're not legally obliged. And you're doing it because your own moral code insists you do so. Not the demands of others, not the demands or the power of the state, not the preacher's teachings on Sunday, nor the monetary or physical rewards of this world. The Queen knows a great deal about duty, her life being the example of how a life committed to the responsibilities for which she was groomed, and which were assumed with her father's death, have been lived out. I remember as a youngster hearing how Princess Elizabeth went to bed in a tree house in Kenya and awoke to the words, "Your Majesty, the King is dead. Long live the Queen." It was all so dramatic, so earth-shaking, so life-altering. The radios all played somber music, and the movie theaters and bars were closed, and the headlines were a foot tall. Well, her duty had been spelled out to her in the lives of monarchs before her, good and bad, well done and abandoned. And she accepted the challenge and has lived it every day of her life. For others, It has not been so easy or so natural or so willingly accepted. For duty does come with sacrifice, and a sacrifice involves surrendering something that is cherished. We talk of the ultimate sacrifice, a soldier dying in the cause of freedom, or Jesus dying for the sins of humanity. Queen Elizabeth spoke to the representatives of the Commonwealth the day after her father's funeral, and she explained her understanding of the role she was assuming, the duty she was taking on. I am called to assume the duties and responsibilities of sovereignty. I shall always work, as my father did throughout his reign, to advance the happiness and prosperity of my peoples. I believe most would agree that she's done her best to live up to the duties she described, while also acknowledging that there was undoubtedly a cost she paid, as did her children and family, in her observance of her interpretation of her duty. But it was always her choice as to how she interpreted that duty, as it is yours. And that is why this rather old-fashioned word needs to be resurrected and become part of our day-to-day conversation and decision-making. So much is going on around us these days, dictated by the new mode of communication that we've not yet learned how to control or fully employ. The power of the internet has the potential for being the greatest of forces for good, educating those in distant lands without teachers or books, the collective knowledge of the world at our fingertips, diseases detected and identified, and treatments found from afar, the languages and treasures of distant lands in our living room, the means of reaching out and sharing time with those far from us for business, for pleasure, for families. But like most things, with the good comes the bad. Bullying, child pornography, drug trade, and scams that extort the innocent or the greedy. Ultimately, and probably the worst outcome, is the way we're increasingly limiting our attachment to only the sites that agree with us, that promote what we believe in or loathe what we fear or want to eliminate those in opposition. With the breadth and the wealth of the information available to us, we choose to curtail our options. And so the mob mentality arises, because there is no tempering by other opinions or other voices heard, when one limits themselves to a sole perspective. They then interpret things to support their beliefs, pro or con. They ignore or dismiss any suggestion that they could be wrong. They laugh or sneer or abuse online the others. There's no debating the controversial. It's banned and rejected. Those who are not with the mob are no longer seen or heard. And the multiplicity becomes a singularity, and tolerance becomes a lost art. You know, a decade ago, the debate was that tolerance was not enough. Those who are not the same as us or agreed with us must be embraced. Today I long for the good old days of tolerance and relegate embracing to the bin of lost dreams. Tolerating means that we agree to disagree without getting terribly personal about it. We accept the notion that two intelligent, well-meaning people can come to differing conclusions based on the same evidence or weighing their priorities and objectives in such a way that different paths are trod. We can truly believe and champion free speech while condemning the one who declares that gives them freedom to yell fire in a crowded theater. I believe that the only way to live in harmony is to respect the other person's right to exist and to differ. Otherwise, we're creating a new form of silencing and imprisoning and reducing all to a form of political correctness that will eventually envelop each of us in a straitjacket that eliminates not only personal choice, but freedom and creativity as well. And that ultimately creates a dictatorship that imposes the single voice that alone is permitted to be heard. Our hard-won rights and our freedoms under our constitutional monarchy are too valuable to be frittered away. Unfortunately, when our rights were being debated and mandated, we neglected to lay out the corresponding responsibilities. And so each of us individually has been coming up with our own set, some more successfully than others. We've seen incredible examples of people doing their duty and taking on great responsibilities this past year. Nurses, cleaners, technicians, shelf stockers, postal workers, garbage men, they've redefined their duty as doing their job, no matter the stress and strain or the added dangers and protocols. Captain Tom Moore walking 100 laps of his garden and raising 33 million pounds. Families sacrificing to protect their children and their elderly. Businesses going under after having used their last line of credit to stay open, to keep their staff employed, their dreams intact. We have witnessed heartache, bravely borne, and people wrestling with conflicting duties, to be with elderly parents who rely on them for their sanity, to isolating compliance with government mandates for the good of the community, to continue to go to work for the needs of the many. Doing one's duty is neither simple nor clear in many cases. For me, I go back to my first concept of duty. It was as a brownie. I learned to raise my hand with 3 fingers erect and recite the promise which we made. On my honor, I promise to do my best, to do my duty to God and the King, and subsequently to the Queen, to help other people at all times, and especially those at home. Doing one's duty is honorable. Keeping those promises made so long ago seems a fine and honorable way to go about doing things these days. We are all products of our experiences and our upbringing and the choices that we have made. Our sense of duty is shaped by all of that and so much more. But as our Queen reminded us last Sunday, this has been a time when so many rose to commitment and selfless dedication to duty. Let us, too, seek to emulate them and respond to the call of our hearts to do our duty when and where we see it. The challenge is to do our best. So may it be. Amen. As we continue through Lent, exploring who we are and how we're doing, don't forget to pray. Don't forget a Sunday service or time set aside just for you and God. It all makes for a better world and a better you. Until we meet again, be safe, be well, and may God's blessings flow richly upon you.